Good morning, I'm Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply, and in this video we are going to start to make what we're calling the new laptop bag. We've had the pattern for the laptop bag out for a little bit and we never did a video on it. Before I really wanted to put the pattern out there, I don't think we were selling it online. I think we were just had it in the store for people that had seen the sample that was sitting there. But anyway, before we widely publicized it and everything, I really wanted to make it better. So here's what we're looking at right here. Okay, very simple to make, very simple design. It'll have a shoulder strap on it. I haven't put one on this one yet. This is the one I made up for the new pattern. This one does have piping all around it. Okay, and we're not going to do that in this build video, but I'm going to make another build video on this one within the next week or so, where I'm going to fully line it with material, like a fabric material, and also put some interior pockets in that. So if that, and on that video I'll do the piping as well. So if that's something you're looking forward to, then you might want to wait to build yours until then. I'm also putting this pattern out as a digital download on our website. So we've had a lot of people request that because they don't like to have to pay shipping for a paper pattern and then, you know, wait a week for it to come in the mail. When I finally figured out how to make them to where when I print them, they print out full size and you can stick the pieces of paper together and have the whole pattern. Okay, so again, this is a really easy bag to make. It may look complicated, but I promise it's not, no matter if you're sewing with a machine or by hand. Very little hardware on this bag. You've got a zipper with 2 pulls, and you've got 2 D-rings, and then on the shoulder strap you'll have the clips that clip to these D-rings, and that's it. No specialized hardware. Even on the next video where I do the piping and stuff, nothing that you don't already have probably in your leather bin or have readily available to you. Nothing, you know, special or hard to find. Okay, so I have already cut out most of the pieces for this bag. Right now, we did this one as a mystery box, and it came out with the paper pattern in the box. Okay, there's the pattern right there. Now, I did want to bring out the pattern to show a couple of things, or to show mostly what I like to do when I have a paper pattern, and I'm going to be using it several times. I take this glue right here, Super 77 from 3M. I get it at Home Depot, Lowe's, any kind of hardware, home improvement type store. Anyway, you spray it all over this, spray it all over some cardboard, stick them together, and then I actually, if I have a big enough piece of cardboard to do it, I don't cut my pieces out until after it's stuck to the cardboard. So just a little tip or whatever on that. I mean, beer boxes, cereal boxes, file folders, I've used it all for these patterns. We also, when we receive leather from Herman Oak, it's always every 5 sides is wrapped in a real heavy, it's kind of like what a cereal box is made out of, but it's just brown paper, cardboardy type material. We have tons of those. So people that come to the store, if they're ever looking for something like that, like, we don't sell it, we just keep it so that we can give it to customers if they need it, and they can glue that down to this. We don't ship them. They're like 60 inches wide rolled up, and so we don't ship those. So but if you're ever able to come to the store, we're happy to give you 1 or 2 of them. So anyway, a couple of things I wanted to show you when I cut out the pattern already. Bring the camera down here. All right. Sorry about the mess on my desk, as usual. So we have the handle pieces. Okay, they're right here, and there's these fancy ends on them. Okay, and I'm going to show you an easy way to make those ends if you have the right punches and things like that. You can, you know, cut them out with a scalpel or something like that. But there's an easier way if you have some of the end punches and things like that. And then also this base support. Bring it back up. This little rectangle right here is 2 inches by 2 1/4 inches, and I'll show you a real easy way right now to cut those things out. You need 4 of them. Okay. So what I'm going to do is over here on the floor, I've got the scraps from cutting all the rest of this out. Okay. Now the rulers that we make are 2 inches wide. Alright, so here I have a piece that's already got a straight edge because I cut something else out of it. So I'm going to put my 2-inch wide ruler on that straight edge there. Okay, and I'm just going to cut out my ruler. Anytime you have little squares and rectangles and things that you have to cut out, it's so much easier to do it like this than it is to individually try to cut those things out and square them up and all that craziness. Okay. Alright, so now that's scrap again. Now, all the rulers I make and all the templates we make, you can peel the back off and you can see through them. Okay, they are translucent. Alright, so you can see through it, right? So I need pieces that are 2 1/4 inches. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'll start here, and this thing's obviously 12 inches long. Okay, so I'm going to back this ruler off 2 1/4 inches, and ka-chow. There we go. Okay, now 2 1/4 times 2 is 4 1/2. So now I'm going to back it up to the 4 1/2 mark. Or you could just stack them on top of each other for your measurements. It doesn't matter. But it's just an easy way to do this. Now we're looking at what, 6 3/4, right? And then the next increment would be 9 inches. Alright, now the one that you saw on the pattern has rounded corners, right? So if you have the pattern piece, you can trace those around and stuff like that. But I'm going to use my corner punch from Tandy, which apparently I have carried over to the other store, where I've been making videos here lately. So I've got to go over there and grab that right quick, and I'll be right back. Alright, got my corner punches. These are from Tandy. They're craft tool. The one I'm going to use is number 3780-01. It's the middle size. There's 3 sizes: small, medium, and large. This is the medium one. And all I'm going to do is take it and put it on the corners and clip those bad boys right off. And it makes real quick work of this as opposed to trying to follow the pattern exactly and stuff like that. These little corner punches, I highly recommend them. I've got one of each size. I use the smallest one the most, the middle one pretty often, and every once in a while I use the largest one. But anyway, they're really good to have. So there it is against my hand, so you can actually see the corners and all. All right, so I'm gonna do the other 3 off camera in just a minute, but first I will show you. These are going to be the handles. Okay, the handles are 21 3/4 inches long, and I made these. I just went ahead and cut them out the length of my 24-inch ruler. So I'll cut them to length here right quick. There we go. There we go. Alright, now I'm going to use a couple of punches here. The ends of these handles can be any shape you want. The one on the pattern is just kind of my preferred way of doing it. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a English point, which is the pointy one, end punch that's 1.5 inches wide. Take it here to the end of it. Make sure it's nice and centered like it ought to be. It's real easy to get these things not perfectly centered on a strap, and then they look kind of womper-jawed. Okay, so there's what we've got right there. Okay, we've got the little point. Now I'm going to take a smaller half round punch. Okay, so that's for like a round belt end. I'm going to take it and I'm just going to give it a little bit of a whack in 2 different areas here. Right there. And right there. Okay, and then I'll just take my scalpel and kind of round that little area off right there. Or I could even take my corner punch, I guess, and do it. Yeah. I think so. Heck yeah. And there's what we got. So, again, I have to do that 4 times total. I have to do the other end of this strap and then the other strap, and use your first one as your pattern. You know, kind of lay it over on top of the other as you put the other punches to it, and that will help you guide, and that way they'll all look exactly the same. Again, you can follow the pattern and use a scalpel or X-Acto knife or something like that, but this just kind of makes quicker work out of it. And once you've done it a few times, like, you get pretty good at it. You don't have to measure anything. You just kind of knock them out. So I'm going to pause the video again, and I'll do the rest of those, and then we're going to start constructing this bag. All right, so I got those pieces knocked out. Okay, so there's my handles right there, both ends, looking all pretty and stuff. Now, I'm struggling. I really like contrasting stitching. Most people know that. I really like, if I'm making something with a darker leather, I like to use like a natural colored stitching or something like that. But I think I'm going to keep everything dark on this bag and use a dark stitching. One of the other things we need to talk about is skiving. Just like any of our bag projects, there is a lot of skiving that can be done. However, depending on what leather you're making it out of, it may not be 100% necessary. So I am making this bag out of the Kodiak leather from Tandy, and it folds over pretty nicely without skiving, but it really, like, especially in the corners and things like that of the bag, this is a turned bag. It's sewn inside out and then turned right side out. And especially like in the corner areas and things like that, skiving really would help. Again, it's not 100% necessary, but if you want it to be as nice as it can be, and you really want to practice your skills, you may want to give it a try. I know that's easy for me to say. Everybody knows I've got the skiving machine, and that's what I'm going to use here. But yeah, I realize how difficult this is if you don't have a skiving machine. So yeah. Alrighty, so I'm going to set up my skiver, and in just a moment we'll get this thing knocked out again. Alright, got my skiver set up exactly how I want it here, and I'm going to skive every single piece of this bag except for the handles and those little rectangular handle support pieces, those right there. Alright, so these two are part of the top gusset, and I'm going to skive down the long edges of them. Okay, and I'm skiving about half the thickness of the leather and about a ½ inch in. Okay. These machines really do make life easier. I highly recommend one of these things. They're relatively to most leather machines, they're a little bit less expensive, I guess. They're $1,540 for the Cobra model. This is the Cobra model, of course, because that's what I carry in my shop from the Leather Machine Company. Alright, these 3 pieces are the bottom gusset pieces, and I'm going to skive all 4 sides of these. When I skive an area that's already been skived, like that right there, I lift up my presser foot, put it on top of the blade, and then run it through, and that keeps it from accidentally getting pulled under the blade and cutting that corner off and causing me to have to recut out that piece. I've made that mistake plenty of times before I finally learned the error of my ways. Make sure sometimes this stuff can ball up in here depending on what kind of leather it is. Cool thing about this machine too is that it can sharpen itself. I don't enjoy sharpening blades, so I love that feature of this thing. It doesn't sharpen itself, you know, while you're working, but it has a feature on it where you can engage the sharpener and move it over to the blade and sharpen this thing fairly quickly and very accurately. Okay, so that's all the gusset pieces, top and bottom. I'll go ahead and set them over here on my sewing machine. Now the main bag body pieces. We've got 3 main pieces. Okay, we've got a front side of the bag, back side of the bag, and pocket of the bag, and I'm going to skive around all of them. You can go around corners with this thing, you just have to get good with it and make friends with it and go slow. There we go. So there's one of the front and back pieces. Here's the other. These two are exactly alike. I'm not doing it on this bag or in this video, but this bag would look amazing with a tooled patch of leather on the front of it. I want to do up a nice, just maybe like a diamond shape or something like that, tool some floral in it, or even just basket weave in it, and sew to the front of this bag, and it would just, oh man, it would look amazing. But again, I'm not doing it on this one because this video is about just building the bag, not customizing it, or maybe I'll do that on the video where I'm going to add the piping and all that. We'll really make a fancy schmancy deluxe model of this bag. So this is the pocket piece. It's rounded on 2 corners and squared on 2 corners. So there we go. All the skiving is done. This bag, again, is pretty simple. It doesn't have a ton of pieces to it. I'm going to pause this, reposition the camera over to the sewing machine, and we're going to get to putting some panels together. Alright, so I've got me a roll of double-sided sticky tape, which is just my best friend when I'm sewing, and I'm also realizing that I have the wrong presser feet on my machine, so I apologize. Let me pause this one more time to switch that out. Alright, got the right feet on my machine now, got the thread I want in it, and since I'm sure people want to know, the feet that were on it are these right here, and they're piping feet. That piping that goes around the outside of this bag is the last thing that I sewed on here. And anyway, when you use these specialized feet, it really makes piping easy. That being said, I've sewn plenty of them without the specialized feet because I didn't know there was such a thing for the longest time. But you can get these from the Leather Machine Company, and if you plan on doing much piping, they are worth their weight in gold. They really do help you keep on track. Alright, so I've got my double-sided tape, and I've got every piece of leather for my bag. Okay, and we've got some things that we're gonna prep up here, and we'll just kind of go down the line and get them all together. So one of the first things I'm going to do is my top gusset pieces are going to have the zippers sewn to them. Okay, but first I have to fold that corner over, or that edge, on one side of this, and then I'll stick that zipper to it. So what I have to do is put a piece of double-sided tape right here on this edge. I'll fold it back onto itself like that, and then I'll put another piece of double-sided tape to stick the zipper to it. Alright, so I'll do one on camera and then I'll do one off camera, and that way you get to see it, but you don't have to see it twice. If you want to see it twice, rewind the video. Okay. I've said it a million times on videos, not every kind of double-sided tape will do what you need it to. The stuff at the hardware store, no good. The stuff at the hobby store, no good. The stuff at the fabric store, not good enough. Okay, but the stuff that you'll find at your leather stores is pretty good stuff. So at our store in Tandy, the tape that we sell is really good stuff, very good adhesion, and works well with leather and stuff like that. So I'm just going along and I'm just bending it back to the skive, trying to keep it nice and straight, and sticking it down. Okay, then I'll get my roller and I'll roll along that to really flatten it out and make it nice. Then I'll stick my zipper, or half of it, to it. All right, so just like that. Okay, and I'm going to get my roller over here, my squeaky toy, and I'll stick that sucker down there real good. There it is. So I'm just going to turn it over and just roll down that seam that I pressed there. Okay, and I love this Kodiak leather. It's got a great pull up to it when you do stuff like that. So it's got a real nice edge to it. Okay, now I'm going to take my zipper and I'm going to stick half of my zipper to it. Okay, so another piece of double-sided tape. I don't want it right up to the edge of that fold because I don't want it seen after this thing is sewn. All right, I don't want that stuff to seep out. The double-sided tape is very ugly when it can be seen. It's, you know, it's shiny and stuff, and it just doesn't make for a professional product. You know, for your customers or your friends that you're making stuff for or whatever. All right, so what I'm going to do is take off the tape here, or the backing of the tape, and stick that zipper to it. Okay, and the best and easiest way, the zipper is ambidextrous at this point. Okay, the best and easiest way to do this is to have it to where I can see the zipper, so I can make sure that the leather fold is evenly spaced with the edge of the zipper train, the zipper tracks. Okay, and I'll give you a close-up of this before I start to sew it in just a moment. But I want to make sure that the zipper's not all wavy in it, you know, like the goal is to have it nice and straight in there. For years I was very afraid of zippers, very intimidated by them, but now I put zippers on almost everything I make because I just figured out how to, I finally just sat down one day with a bunch of zipper stuff and figured out how to use it, and I'm really glad I did. Throw the rest of those pieces out of the way there. I'll use my roller here and I'm going to roll that down real nice and good. And there's what we're looking at right there. Okay, so now I'm just going to go along and I'm going to sew about 1/8 of an inch or so from that fold over and stitch this zipper into place. Okay, let's see if I can get that camera a little bit closer here. There we go. All right, and I'll start with a back stitch. And then I'll go forward. Now my sewing machine's set up to go pretty quick, so I'm gonna speed this sucker up here and get going on it. I'm not using any kind of an edge guide, not really a need to. This is a very easy seam to stitch. What I've learned is if you just kind of keep your fingers where they need to be, then the leather will just slide straight through them. Coming up to the end here, and I've got more zipper than I need. I'm all about trimming off the rest of the zipper later, but I'd sure hate to have too short of a zipper. So this is a zipper by the yard is all it is. You know, it doesn't have any ends or anything on it yet. We will take care of that here in a few after all this is sewn together. So there we are. There's what we're looking at. Okay, it's all sewn together as far as half of it goes. Now what I'm going to do off camera is I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other side, and I'm going to stick it to the other half of the zipper there, and I'm going to sew it down. And when we come back, we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so here's my completed zipper piece. Alright, and we will set that aside to work on some more here in a little bit. We've got other things to sew together. So the next pieces I'm going to grab are my bottom gusset pieces, all three of them. And we're going to do a lap seam on these. Alright, so what's that mean? We're going to take two of them and put them back to back or face to face on top of each other, so it's finished side or unfinished side out. And we're going to sew them together right at the edge of our skive here. Okay? Just make sure they're nice and straight with each other. If you have to put a little clip on them to hold them together, you can. I would, but I don't have a clip handy to me, so I'll just trust my abilities. That may be something that I regret later. We'll see. Alright, so I'm going to back stitch a couple of stitches, and then I'm going to go forward. Once again, keeping them nice and straight on top of each other as I go. And just straight across that edge, very close to that skive, where the skive ends. Okay. I'll give you a close-up so you can see exactly what I've done here. There it is. Okay, I just sewed it right there, about a 3/16 of an inch from where the leather gets thicker. Okay, so the edge of the skive. I'm going to clip off these tails here right quick. And now we'll do the lap part of the lap seam. Okay, and all that means is we're going to fold half of it underneath and get a nice crease going right there. Alright, and once again, we're going to make sure that this piece is straight as it is. Alright, and now we'll sew right along the edge of the fold. Makes a very strong seam, but it also makes a seam where all the edges are finished, okay? If this were veg tan, then I would just stack one layer on top of the other and make sure that the edge of that was burnished, but it's not veg tan and we don't burnish it, so... Ooh, one more back stitch. I want to back stitch all the way to the very edge of it there because that's going to be in the seam of the bag as we build the actual bag. Okay, so I'm going to sew this down and then I'll show it to you again. And then we're going to put the other piece on the other end of it. Alright, so let me clip this sucker off. So there's what it looks like, the completed lap seam. Alright, bring it down a little bit. So there it is, and then there's what the back side of it looks like. Now, I need to do the exact same thing on the other side. So I'm going to put the finished side to it here, and this will wrap around, these three pieces will wrap around the bottom of the bag, okay? And I want those folds to face in towards each other at the bottom of the bag. The corners of it will be right here and right here, but I want these folds to face inward to each other. If they faced outward, it just, to me, doesn't look right. I'm sure there's nothing structurally wrong with it. It just doesn't seem like the right way to do it. When you see one that's, when you do it that way and look at it, you're like, probably would have looked better if it was on the other side. So, I'm going to stack these on top of each other, make sure they're nice and straight. Back stitch a couple. Sew them together. Okay, when we get to the end, I'll back stitch again. Pull and clip here, get rid of my tails, and then do that lap seam again. I didn't talk about it, I'm sorry. I'm using this is a class 18 machine. I'm using size 138 thread, and I'm using a size 24 needle. Okay. Now, if I take this top one and fold it back this way, and push that seam down, that's where I'm going to stitch this thing. Okay. And once again, I want to make sure that this creates a straight line going down this gusset piece. Okay. Just because of how I like to have my presser foot and everything, I'm going to roll up this other side and put it on the inside of the machine here, as you can see. That way the edge of my center foot is right along that fold. Okay. Alright, so once again, a couple of back stitches and forward. There we go. Okay, so there is my completed gusset. We did the top part with the zipper, and the bottom part here has the three pieces joined. Okay, and we're going to keep on rolling. We're going to set this aside. And we're going to grab our last three pieces here. Okay, we've got the front, the back, and the pocket of the bag. The pocket's real simple. The only prep work we need to do on it is we're going to fold that long straight edge down. All right, and we're going to put some tape on it, and we're going to sew that seam, and that'll be the top of the pocket so that it has a finished edge on it. Okay, we like finished edges. Put those other two out of the way for just a moment. Got a little premature when I grabbed them all, I guess. So I'm just gonna put some tape along here. I'm gonna fold it right at that skive and sew it down. It doesn't seem it, but we're coming up on already being about halfway done with this bag as far as, you know, completion from very beginning to very end. All right, so I'm going to fold that down, and then I'm going to take my roller to it to lay it nice and flat, and then I'm going to sew it. Some people use a leatherworker's hammer, you know, to tap down this stuff right here. That'll work just fine. Some people, I mean, you can use a rolling pin. You can use a glass. It doesn't matter. Just take something and roll over it to really help that stick down onto your tape. Especially if you're using something kind of oily that the tape doesn't want to stick to at first, but you'll make it. All right. Now I'm going to sew this one down. I could use my edge guide here. Not really a need to. You know, I tell a lot of people when they come to buy a machine that even if they buy the edge guide with the machine, learn to sew without it. And then put it on there afterward as a convenience thing, and you'll be much better at sewing if you've learned how to do it without it. Like right now, I've just got my fingers in place, and I can run this sucker as fast as I want, and it's not going anywhere. That line will stay very, very straight. Okay, got to the end, do a couple of back stitches. There we go. My thread's not coming off my comb too easily here. Been having that problem a lot lately. I wonder what I'm doing wrong. All right, so this piece is now ready to set aside. We're not going to do anything further to it at this time. Okay. Now we'll grab one of the front or back pieces. Okay, they're ambidextrous, they can be either. And we're going to grab our little handle support pieces. Okay, and it's time to put those on there. Now, we want to put those about a 1/2 inch below the skive, okay? And then they're going to be centered on the bag, 6 inches apart. All right, so let me grab a ruler here. I love these quilting rulers because you can set it on one of those lines and know that it's straight under there. Okay, let me get it all the way to the end here so the math isn't so hard. Now, again, I need these things 6 inches apart. Turn this thing over so the numbers actually line up. It's hard to start at 24 and count backwards when I could just start at 1 and work my way up. All right. And then I need 6 inches in between them. All right, let me put my thingy here. I'm going to cut out a couple of pieces of double-sided tape. So once I've got these in position, I can actually stick them down. Okay. And I'm going to do one side of the bag, and then, you know, off camera I'll do the other side. That way you don't have to watch me do it twice. I'll cut off a couple of pieces of this tape here. Okay, and I'll just take each one and put a couple of pieces of tape on the back. Doesn't really matter where, as long as they're not sticking out over the edges like this one right here is. Okay, you don't want to see them stick out past the leather. And the reason that we have these little support pieces under the sewn handle is pretty simple. The more surface area that you've got to carry the load, then the less chance you have of it like stretching out that particular spot in the leather. Okay, you don't want the side of your bag to get all stretched out just right there around the handle, and it might do that if it's just around that that one little teardrop shape. So we'll sew that teardrop shape to this big old rectangular shape, and it'll work great. So I'm just getting both of these ready to go. Okay, and taking the stickies off. All right. Now, again, 6 inches apart from each other. Okay, so this whole thing is almost 17 inches wide. Okay, so we're going to subtract the 6 inches from that. We have 11 inches left. Okay, divide that by 2, and it should be about 5.5 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. And I'm going to very lightly set these on here. Okay, very lightly, in case I need to move them. And then again, 5.5 inches in from this side. Oops. And what I'm measuring is to the insides of these, okay? Not to the outside of it, but to the insides of them. All right. Am I on camera? Yes. Sorry, I can't see my screen from here, so I had to make dang sure I'm not just talking to nobody here. Okay. So we'll press those down a little bit. Make sure that, yes, there are 6 inches in between them. They're roughly 1.5 inches from the very top of the piece of leather there. Okay. Now I'm just going to sew around those. Again, we'll do the second one off camera, but we're going to do the exact same thing to the other side of the bag here in a few minutes. Just sewing right along the edge of them. Make all my turns when I'm going around something rounded. Make all my turns while the needle's down in the leather, and that it keeps the stitch length consistent. Okay, it makes it where it's not jumping around and making a giant stitch, then a little bitty stitch, and stuff like that. Alright, we'll get back to our original stitch location, and we'll just overstitch those first couple of stitches, and that'll lock them all in. Anytime we're going all the way around something, we don't have to back stitch first. We just go back to our original stitches and stitch over them a couple of times, just like we are if we're hand sewing. I'll clip this off. I'll show you a close-up view for the camera, and then I'm going to pause the camera again also on this one, and then I'll stick the other two on the other side of the bag as well. There we go. So there it is. Okay, real simple. There's nothing difficult about making this bag other than the time it takes. Alright, so I got all four of the little support pieces sewn on. Now we're going to do our handles. Okay, the first thing I need to do is we're going to take and fold our handles in half from this area down all the way to that area on the other end, and we're going to sew them in half like that. Now, if you want a more rigid and structured handle, you can take a piece of leather that's maybe a 1/2 inch wide and put it in between those two and sew it in as a core. We did that on the Doctor bag, but I'm not going to do that on this particular model. Excuse me, got the hiccups. All right, so I'm going to take my tape and fold that sucker in half and use my little squeaky toy and get it to lay nice and flat for myself so that I can sew it. And then we're going to go ahead and sew it to the side of the bag. Okay. If your leather's having a hard time staying, folded over, you can put some clips along here and keep it clipped together. Hopefully it'll stay stuck long enough for me to get my squeaky toy out and go down it, because that usually seals the deal. But I want to make sure these edges are nice and flat with each other, because then I don't have to do any finishing on them other than, if I want to edge paint them or something like that. But I don't have to do any trim work and sanding and stuff like that. And I'm going to need some clips. This is definitely not staying together long enough for me to get all the way down. So let me find my clips here. Alright, found my bag of clips here. So again, I'm just going to put this sucker together with the edges nice and lined up. Get it good and stuck. And again, I want those edges to be cleanly lined up. If it's all wavy and stuff, you're going to spend a lot of time trimming. And why do that if you can avoid it right here? Myra bought the dogs a new dog bed, and Myra has a problem with trying to eat them, pulling all the stuffing out, and then they don't have a dog bed anymore. Alright, almost got this sucker all the way down. Alright, final. So, I'm just going to put it under there and sew it right down the edge. And that's that. It's not that difficult. So we'll start out with a couple of back stitches. And then run it forward, removing clips as I go. Get to the end, I'm going to back stitch a little bit. There we go. I'll show this to you, and then again I'm going to pause the camera and I'll do the other one by myself. And when I come back, we'll stick them to the bag. Okay, there it is. All right, folks, got my handles sewn up here. So now what I'm going to do is just take an edger to them right quick and round off that sharp corner. This is just a number 2 Ron's round edger. And I'm just going to hit up both sides of it here and take off the sharpness. Since when I sewed them up, I made sure that they were nice and flush with each other when I folded them in half. Then I don't have to worry about doing any sanding or anything on them to flush them up. Every one of these projects, the more care you take on one step will just save you time and effort on the next step. Okay, now it's time to put the handles on the bag sides. Okay, so I'm going to grab one of my sides. It's real simple. These suckers fit on here really well. And you're just going to center them with the point of it being pretty much right at the bottom of right where the stitch line is, at the bottom of your rectangle. Okay? And you're going to do that on each of them, just like that. Okay? And then when we go to build the bag, these will just fold down inside of it, since we're going to sew it up inside out, of course. But it's a lot easier to sew these before the bag is put together than after. Okay, now I'm going to take some double-sided tape and just put right along here, and that'll help hold it in place while I sew it. And I'm only going to do one at a time. I'm not going to stick both of them and then try to sew them because one of them will pull off, guaranteed, while I'm sewing the other side. So I might as well just plan ahead for that and only do one side at a time. Okay. Yar. Almost there. Problem with some of the more oil-rich leathers is just that the tape doesn't like to initially stick. You know, you really got to press it on there good, and then it'll stick fine. There you go. So you can rivet these into place, you can sew them into place, you can do a combination of both. pretty much whatever you want to do. It'll work. Okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew from like up here down around and then up here on the other side. Okay, and I'll back stitch first, and then I'll sew that up, and then again I'll pull it out of the machine. And I'll put the other handle in place and sew it on too. Okay, so here we go. A couple of back stitches, of course, first, and then here, go forward. Fold that down and out of the way so I can fit it in the machine a little easier. Okay. Turn this whole thing as a unit. I'm going to turn it with the needle down in the leather, and again that'll help keep my placement and keep my stitches even. Okay. And then when I go up this other side of this handle, I want to try to stop my stitch evenly with the other side of it. Just for aesthetics, of course. It'll look better if they're even. There we go. Just like that. Now, if you are using a sewing machine, everybody knows that the front of a stitch on a sewing machine and the back of the stitch on a sewing machine look a little bit different, okay? So when you sew these on, you want to be cognizant that the front of your stitch, the pretty side of your stitch, is on the up side of the handle when it's being held, okay? Doesn't matter what's underneath as much because not as many people see that. So I sewed that one side. Now I'm going to stick the other end on, and I'm going to sew it down. Okay, I'm going to do that off camera. Then I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side of the bag with the other handle. Okay, when I come back, that'll be done. We're going to start putting the gusset together. All right, folks, we've got both the handles sewn on. Now it's time to quit putting off the inevitable, and now it's time to put zippers on this thing. Okay, so we already sewed our zipper strip to it, right? And I got a thread got sewn across here. Clip that off. But we got to put the slides on the zipper. Okay. Nobody's favorite thing to do. I understand. That'll be all right. So we're going to separate it first. All right. Just pull it apart. Then we're going to take our zipper slide. We'll put one side on and just kind of barely have it hanging off the edge there, and then we're going to work the other side into it. Sometimes you can kind of feel it click into place, sometimes you can't, but you got to work it down, and it's not easy. It really helps if you have a third person to help out and kind of hold on to things while you do it. Sometimes I can get it in just the first time go, and most of the time that is not the case. All right, there we go. All right, so I got this end on, and it zips up just fine, but now comes the really fun part, and that's putting the other end on. Okay, so if you've watched any of my zipper videos before, this is nothing new, but we're going to zip this one all the way down until it's just an inch or so away. Being very careful, if you accidentally unzip it all the way off, then you start all over again. Okay, so I want to get it all the way to the other end so that I know exactly where these two are going to match up, because I want to put the other end on and it needs to all square up and be right. So I'll put this one on this end first, and then work this end into it. And just a second here, get it right. And then once I get it on, I'm going to zip the pieces up to each other. And if there's more zipper tape on one side than the other, then we've got to do it again. All right, got it on. That's zipping. So let me back this sucker up, and I'll zip them up to each other. All right, we got it right. Now what I'm showing here is when I push these two up against each other, there's not a big bubble on one side or the other of extra zipper chain. Okay, had I not gotten it on straight, one of these sides would be kind of bubbled out and the other one would be tight. And yeah, you can see that on screen. Yeah, and then it wouldn't be straight. So you have to back off one of them and get it on there and try to get it straighter on there so that the two sides are even when zipped up. Okay? Now, for the next part, we're going to need a Sharpie marker. Okay? Doesn't have to be a special Sharpie marker, just something to mark some leather. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bag, one of my sides, and I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm not going to crease it or anything. I'm just going to fold it in half so I can find the center of both the top and the bottom. I'm going to put a little clip on it just to hold it in place while I do this. Okay. And again, I'm not, especially with a leather with pull-up, you don't want to crease it, you know, going down it, but you can crease it right here in the very center. And I'm just going to mark the very centers of them. Okay. Now, I need to take this piece, and yeah, I'm gonna fold it in half, but I also want to make sure that these lines right here, where those overlapping pieces are, where the gusset pieces were sewn together, I want to make sure those are nice and even too. Okay, so if we have to fudge 1/8 of an inch or something to make sure that those are lined up, that's okay. And again, I'm going to mark my centers. There we go. Now that we have all those measurements, take the clip off that was holding this, I'm going to take this bottom gusset piece here and I'm going to start clipping it to the bag body. And I'm going to line up those center markings that I did. All right, and I'm going to line them up and put them face to face. And I'll start clipping them together. And I work my way from the center out. All right, and that ensures that like these two pieces are, you know, even on the sides of the bag or the bottom of the bag. And then when it gets up here to the sides, you know, here and here, these will be even as well. All right. So this is where if you're working with leather that has a little bit of stretch, it's great because that'll really help you get around these corners while you're clipping all this together. Okay. So here we go up, and I'm going to stretch the gusset piece just a little bit as it goes around the corner. And that'll ensure that the two pieces lie flat with each other. All right. If we did all this right, then this, where the folded over part of this gusset, the lap seam that we did, is going to be right before the curve starts. Okay, and that's good. We definitely don't want to try to sew that thing into a curve. We want it on a flat area of the seam. Just a lot easier to sew that way. Okay, and then as I go around the curve, I'm going to make sure that my edges are lined up nicely. And I'm going to continue putting my clips on. And I'll do a close-up. I know my hands are in the way. Oop, that clip's gone forever. I know that my hands are in the way as I clip this up. I apologize. That's how it works. All right, so we've got it clipped pretty much all the way to the top there. And now we're going to go back over here to the other side and start working our way up there. Okay? And what we're doing is we're getting our measurement to make sure that our gusset's going to fit just right once we're ready to really construct this bag, which will be in just a few minutes. Okay, again, I'm going to stretch out this gusset piece just right here on the edge as it goes around that curve, and it'll lay a lot nicer. Okay. There it goes, and I need one more little clip out of my bag to get this exactly how I want it here. Actually, I'm gonna need a bunch more clips, so let me just dump all these out. Okay. All right, so if we did this right, these lap seams will be right at the edges of the corners, and then the tops will be just below the top corners up here, okay? And that's exactly where we want them. Now, we will take this gusset piece and clip it around the top end, okay? And this one, since it's universal all the way across, we don't really care where it's at. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna overlap these two pieces an 1.5 to 2 inches or so here and start clipping it around, okay? And then I'm gonna mark all that here in a minute so that, you know, once I'm pull it back apart, I know where to sew it together, okay? So, give me just a second, I'm gonna have to pause this. My phone's going off and I think Janie's trying to get a hold of me, so I'd better answer that. All right, I was right. Janie was trying to get a hold of me, so I took care of that. All right, now we're going to go around this, and we're going to do the exact same thing as we did on the bottom. We're going to kind of stretch out that gusset a little bit as we clip it along, okay? And we're just going to go from one side to the other. Dogs, calm down. Sorry, they're getting rambunctious. They're ready to go home. Okay, now we're back to the other corner, so we're going to stretch it out a little bit. Flip it around. All right. Now, here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to put some marks on here. Okay, I'm going to take my Sharpie marker and I'm just going to mark where the bottom of this is right here. All right, I'm going to mark it on this piece and I'm going to mark it on this gusset piece. Excuse me. All right, and when I do that, that'll show me, when I take all this stuff back off, that'll show me where these need to line up when this gets sewn together, okay? Because we're going to sew the top gusset to the bottom gusset, and that'll make one circle that'll go all the way around the bag, and then we're going to sew it to one side of the bag and then the other. All right, so I'm going to take my marker here. I'm going to put a little line, obviously on the bottom of that. I mean, it's not really needed, but there's a line right there, and then another one on this bottom gusset piece. And then I'm going to put a little A on both of them, because if I accidentally get this thing turned around, then I don't want to not know which one goes where, okay? So a little A on there. I'm also going to take and just make a mark wherever kind of close to the center on this piece, all right? And it doesn't matter if it's right in the center as long as it's in the same spot on both pieces. Alrighty? Or I guess it could. I mean, we did mark the center of this earlier. I forgot that we had done that. So that's fine. I will mark the center of this gusset piece too. Now, I'm going to go over here to the other end, and I'm going to make my little marks, and I'm going to put a little B by them. Okay? B. All right, now, all that work that we did to put all those pieces together, we're going to undo it. Okay, we're going to take all the clips off. We're going to take the gussets off. We were just kidding about putting gussets on. Haha. Now we have to sew the gusset together. Okay. How do we do that, you say? Well, first, we have to cut one more little piece out of our leather. Okay, it's not on the pattern because it's just a simple little 1 inch by 3 inch piece. We need 2 of them, and that's going to be for our D-rings. All right. So let's grab scrap of this leather and a ruler. And I'll tell you what, I'm just going to pause this and do it off screen right quick, as opposed to moving everything down there where the camera is. So, be right back. Alright, so there it is, two little 1" by 3" pieces, and these are going to be the pieces that hold our D-rings. Okay, and they're going to be sewn into the joint between the gussets. So I'm going to fold them in half here, get them ready for their D-rings. Get some double-sided tape to hold them in half, hold them folded in half. Okay. Just cut me out a couple of pieces of this. I would, if I had my wider pieces of tape handy, I would just use one that's 3/4 of an inch wide or so and do it that way, but I don't, so I'll just use a couple of these little quarters. Oops, gone forever. Okay. Alright, so take my D-ring, put it on there, remove the backing off my tape. Yar. Seems like it gets harder and harder as the day goes on. Alright, and then I'm just going to stick those two together and press them together really well so that the tape doesn't come off. Okay, because again, this is a pretty oily piece of leather, so. Alright, exact same thing over here. Little D-ring action. And there we go. Okay, now back to what we were doing with the gussets. I wanted to stop and do that real quick because I definitely don't want to forget those pieces. That's what holds the shoulder strap onto the bag. I'm going to throw my side piece off to the side for a moment. That all goes together. Okay, now what's going to happen here? So we have A and A. These are going to go like this. Okay, and this end is going to be folded under and then sewn across there, but as an added bonus, that will be in there. And it'll all look like that when it's all sewn and pretty. Okay? So that's the goal, right there. How do we get to the goal? Well, we pray a lot. Alright, so we are gonna put some double-sided tape here. Flip that off. Okay. I'm going to take and fold that over so it makes a nice edge. And we'll use our little roller to press it down firmly. We want to make sure it's nice and straight, otherwise you'll see it. Okay? We don't want to see a crooked gusset seam. Okay. Now, here we have A and A. And they're going to stack on top of each other. The zipper one's going to be on top if we're looking at the inside of the leather. Okay? And I want to clip these together on the sides here. Like so. And so. I want to make sure that it creates a straight line from the bottom to the top gusset, straight line. Okay? And that means it's even if it's got that straight line. Now I'm going to go ahead and put 4 clips on here to hold it extra good. Okay, again, A and A. Now, I'm going to take this thing and put some more double-sided tape on it because I want it to stick into place so that my sewing machine doesn't try to move it once I get to sewing this thing. Okay? Now, all the double-sided tape that we're using, we want to make sure that none of it's in a place where it could accidentally show, even if we missed our sew line just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to put a piece right there, and then for double double assurances here, I'm going to put those same pieces on the back side as well. Okay, got those pressed on there really well. I'm going to pull off the backing off of them. And then I'm just going to open this area up and push that in there. And I want it to go all the way down until the D-ring is almost touching that bottom gusset fold. Just like that. Okay, it'll be about 1/8 of an inch off, and I want it centered over that zipper. Okay. And there's what we're looking at right there. That's what we're going to sew together. So we're going to sew it, and then I'll pause the camera and I'll do the exact same thing on the other side with putting the B's together. Alright, so let me roll up this zipper a little bit and get it out of the way of the sewing machine's throat. I'm going to back stitch, of course, first, and then go forward and just sew that line down. Sew this line in about 1/8 of an inch or so from that fold of that bottom gusset where it folds over itself. Now, we got two things to worry about. One is we've got to step up onto the thickness of this D-ring holder. And then two, we've got this metal zipper that we're about to sew through. Okay, if you're using a sewing machine and sewing through a metal zipper, what I always do is I hand wheel it through that area, and it ensures that my needle finds its way between the zipper teeth and it doesn't just dead stop on one and damage my machine, my needle, whatever. Now, as I step up onto this thicker area though, you can't see it, but my knee is what lifts my presser foot. I'm going to kind of assist my presser foot a little bit with my knee, and that'll help it to step up onto that area. As opposed to, counting on the machine to do it, it doesn't quite make that step. And then now you've got 8 stitches in one tiny little place because the machine's just standing still trying to sew. Okay, so here I am going through the zipper area. I've got to find my way down to between the teeth, so I'm just using my hand wheel and going slow. There we go. We've made it through the zipper. And now I can go back to using the motor of the machine and letting it do what it does. Let me take that clip off and out of the way there. I'm just going to sew right off to the other side and back stitch it and call that sucker done. And I'll show you what it looks like. Where's my little snippers? There are times when, as I'm sewing through a zipper, it decides that the zipper can cut the thread. I hate it, but sometimes that just happens. So I just kind of back up and re-sew that area. I pull those threads out and do it again. Okay. So there's what we're looking at right there. Sewed all the way across. We've got some pretty ugly foot marks, but in this kind of leather it just rubs right out, not a problem. So now I'm going to take over here, I'm going to line up my B and my B, and I'm going to fold that edge down again, and I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side, making sure that I place the other D-ring inside there, and then also making sure there's not a twist in this. Okay, it needs to be a circle all the way around like a giant belt, because that's what it is. It's going to be a belt for the bag basically. So I'm going to pause the camera, do all this, and when I come back, we'll start sewing the sides onto the bag. All right, folks, we're getting to the home stretch here. So we've got this entire thing sewn up, and like I said, now it's just a big circle. So what I want to do is trim off some of this. It is no longer needed. So I'm just going to cut carefully, cutting off that excess bit of zipper and stuff like that. Just like with your sewing machine, go really careful and slow with your scissors when you're cutting through that zipper, and you won't damage your scissors. You want it to find its way between the teeth You don't want it to just chomp right through there and mess up your cutting edge. Okay. And I'm just trimming it down to, I don't know, an inch or so. It's okay that there's some left over in there, but I don't want a ton of it. Okay, that's all waste. Okay, now let's sew a bag together. I know y'all been waiting on that part. So I'm gonna grab my piece that I did my centers on, okay? And something very important that I need to do right now, it looks like I already did it here, never mind, is I did my center mark on both sides of this, okay? And that's very important because we've got to mark our centers on our other one, because you don't want your bag facings to be crooked with each other. You want them to be straight, okay? But I do have to make this one go across. And I'll need to remember which one it was that was the actual center of this thing. Just let me measure it right quick, and I'll just measure it with the handles, and that'll tell me which one's in the middle there. Okay, this one's the center one. Make it a little bigger there. Okay. So when I line that up with this one, then that means that this one's the center one. All right. So now, again, I'm going to clip this thing together just like I did a while ago, except now it's one piece. So it should be a little easier. Okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my center on my bottom first, and then my center on my top. And then I'm going to work my way around the edges. That way, you know, everything turns out nice and even, and you don't accidentally, you know, sometimes you can put one of these on, and as you go all the way around, when you get back to the end, you've got like an inch loop, inch too much on one side and not the other because you stretched it so much and stuff like that. So there's my bottoms. Now here's my tops. Okay, and then like I said, this is my center mark on my top, is this one right here that I made the longer one here. Okay, and what I need to do is I'll take my straight edge and I'll mark that same center on the other side, and that'll help me once I get to the other side to finish putting the bag together. There we go. Now, I am going to clip this thing all the way around just like we did a while ago. Doesn't matter if I start at the top or the bottom, but what I'm going to do is I will clip from the center all the way over here to where this seam is over here. Okay, and then I'll work my way around from the bottom to that same area. And then I'll flip it over and I'll do the other side over there. Now, you may ask yourself why I'm not gluing or taping it like I would a lot of projects. And the very honest answer to that is it's very hard once you turn it right side out. If any of that glue or tape shows in that seam, it's just going to look terrible and it's very difficult to get out of there. So I just don't. I use lots of these little binder clips, and yeah, it works great. Okay, so as I go around this corner here, I'll just line up the edges, put a clip on it. All right, and I'm at that seam right there where the top and bottom gusset go together, so I'll come back down here to the bottom and start working my way from the center over to back to that same area. Okay. A couple of clips along this flat side here. Then once we get to the corner, we'll do a lot more clips. And Clips are more important in the corners because that's the area that it'll try to move on you while you sew it, as opposed to, you know, the flat areas are pretty easy to sew. Okay. And it's a danged if you do, danged if you don't on bag making. The floppier the leather, the easier this thing is to put together, but then it won't hold any rigidity or form as a bag, you know. So you gotta, you know, pick your favorite leathers and kind of something in between. You don't want it too floppy, you don't want it too rigid, you know. It's funny like that. All right, so did that side. Now we're going to come over here and do the exact same thing on the other side. We'll work our way from the top or bottom, doesn't matter, around to that seam. Okay, and then we're going to flip it over and do the bottom half. Cool thing about a turn bag is, don't get me wrong, a nice straight sew line is important, especially when you go around the corners, but if you're a little bit off or something shifts just a tiny bit, be all right. Just keep going. If it's bad enough, we can redo it later. After the rest of the bag is sewn together and holding well, then it might even be easier, but yeah, for the most part. All right, so I made it back to that seam, so now I'm going to go back to the bottom again. And so far, this is all fitting together like it ought to, so we did a good job with our putting our top and bottom gussets together. You'll instantly know when you go to clip it together, once you've done a half of it, if the sides didn't line up, then you didn't do it right. Alright, everything's lining up great, so we're about to sew this sucker together. Exciting. Now, depending on what kind of leather I'm using and stuff like that, it might be easier to sew it together just like this, or if I flip it over, it might be easier that way. It really, 6 in one hand, half a dozen the other. It can be easy or hard both ways, just depending on your sewing style and the type of leather you're using. I mean, a million things can go into it. This one I feel like it's going to be just fine laying down flat, with that piece laying flat, and that is what I prefer if I can. So I'm going to start the sewing. I'm going to sew this line about, what is that, 3/8 or so from the edge, and that'll be a nice seam allowance. Okay, and as I get to a clip, I'm just going to take it off. I'm also making sure all these clips hanging off back here and everything, like they can get hung up on the edge of your table, so you want to kind of make sure that doesn't happen. And I'm just going to do a complete circle around the entire bag. Okay, and then the corners is the part you got to really pay attention to, because as you take the clips off, the pieces could try to move. They don't try to move as much on the flat areas, but in the corners they can try to move. Okay, and again I'm going to do my turns while my needle's down in the leather, and that'll keep it from getting crazy long or short stitches in it. Keep them nice and even. Spin it around a little bit here. the hammer down when it, you know, it's at a straight, flat area, and sew as fast as you're comfortable with. Now we're back to a turn, so go slow again, work our way around it, make sure the pieces stay nice and even. Okay, back to a straightaway, so we're gonna zip along from clip to clip here, just making sure they don't get hung up on the edge of the table. Okay, coming back into the third corner here. Feel like a dog race or a horse race here. There we go, working our way around. Back to a straightaway again. As I sew along, I'm still making sure that my edges are lined up nicely. I want the top and the bottom piece right on top of each other. Alright, coming around the fourth corner here. Okay. The one thing when you go around these corners is you want to make sure that you don't accidentally sew any folds or bubbles into it. You know, like if you stretch that edge of that gusset good, then you won't have to worry about it. But if you're using a leather that's a little bit too rigid, it can be more difficult. But if you sew a bubble or a fold in there, it's there. It's not going anywhere. When you turn the bag right side out, you'll see it. Alright, now we're back to our original stitch. So we're just going to stitch back in the same first couple of holes, go 2 or 3 of them, and make sure we're nice and even. And there we go. That side's on. So there we go. Now I'm going to just, as a demonstration, kind of fold that gusset back for you and show you what your corners and everything should look like. And then we're going to move on to sewing the second side on. Okay? So when this thing's turned like that, oh, it's going to look great with that leather. Okay? Got a nice coloration to it and everything. I love the pull up on this stuff. Yar. There we go. So there's the seams, what we're looking at. Okay, they look pretty good. Now what we have to do is we have to do the exact same thing to the other side. But first, of course, I have to turn it back inside out. All right, now, extremely important. Anytime you're making something with a zipper that's a turn bag or whatever, open it, okay? Unzip it some, enough for you to easily get your hand in there, okay? Because once that other side is sewn on there, if we didn't unzip that, it would be really fun to try to unzip from the outside, okay? Now, I'm gonna line up and get everything set up to sew together here, and then I'm gonna pause the camera because you don't have to watch me sew the exact same line on the other side of the bag, okay? All right, folks, so I have just learned how to edit videos, so I am going to have to fix this. You're already watching it if it's already fixed. So anyway, I did not sew the pocket on. Like, I completely finished the bag on the video and then looked over there and there's my pocket. And so it didn't happen. So, we did the first side there, okay? And then we went to clip up the second side, but we didn't put the pocket on it first. We got to put the pocket on it first. Okay, so let me put that aside. We're going to put this pocket on here. Basically, I just unstitched the bag, and I'm going to put it back together the exact same way, but I'm going to make sure when I sew, it's just to the inside of those existing stitch lines, and then I won't have to worry about it. I won't see any of the stitches or anything, you know, the empty stitch holes. Now, to put the pocket on it, the good news is we can use some double-sided tape and hold this on, or we can do it the other way. And that is, I'll sew this pocket to this piece just right out on the very edge, and then I'll clip it back into the bag and put the whole thing together. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just put a couple of clips on here to kind of hold this in place for me. Woo, jumping jack clips. Alright, so yeah, I'm kind of excited to go home and learn how to merge those two videos and delete where I had sewn this bag together previously. We'll figure it out, I reckon. So, yeah. Alright, so again, I'm going to sew just on the very, very edge. Okay, I'm not giving myself anything for a seam allowance, because all I'm doing is holding this pocket on so that when I go to sew the entire bag together, it all, it's just easier to clip together and everything, and I don't have to worry about lining up 3 layers. I only have to worry about lining up 2 layers, because these layers are already joined. I do this a lot with the piping and things like that also, where I'll go ahead and sew the piping to one side, because why try to fight and, you know, sew a gusset around the corner while you're fighting to line up your piping and everything all at the same time? Why not have the piping as part of one half of the problem? Okay. Okay, now that that's put together, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to clip or line up the centers, okay, here and here, with the centers on my gusset. We're going to clip it all together, just like we did before. Okay. The handles inside the bag. You've got to make sure that you unzip your bag to before you sew it all together. If you don't unzip the bag, then you're going to have a very hard time unzipping it from the outside when the zipper's closed. Okay? So again, you can already see my stitch holes here, and I'm going to clip it all together, and this will just have to be a teaching moment. You know, we have lots of teaching moments. So I make a lot of mistakes, guys. I've never ever denied that. Okay, so I'm going to clip all this together, and then again, like I said, when I go to sew this back together, I'm just going to make sure that where you can see my existing stitch line, that I just barely sew to the inside of that, and then you won't see it on the outside of the bag when the bag is turned right side out. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just clip the rest of this bag together just like that. Just like I did earlier, where I'll clip from here to there and there to there, and then I'll move around and do this side and the same thing. And then when I come back, we'll turn the bag right side out. All right, folks, here it is. We have an inside out bag. So now we have to turn it right side out. Okay? So all we're going to do is reach in there, grab a corner from the inside, and we're going to pull it up. Now, I don't want to put a lot of stress on these zipper ends, okay? So I'm going to kind of baby those and turn them gently. Okay, and I also don't want to scratch up my leather on the zipper, so, you know, be real cognizant of that. Maybe fold your zipper out to the outside so that your leather doesn't run up against it and scratch all over. Different leathers will have different results with that. Some of them might not scratch at all, but others like this one will. So, all right, and then I'm going to just push it in from the outside or out from the inside. I'm going to push something, I don't know. Okay, pocket there. Love it when I actually get my pocket out in the bag like it ought to be. All right, now we got to kind of train the bag. The bag doesn't know it needs to fold where it needs to fold yet. So I'm going to take and I'm going to crease it on all these edges, okay, both sides of it, because again, the bag doesn't yet know that it's a bag. It needs an edumacation. Okay. Sorry, I got way too close to the camera there. I apologize. Sometimes I get, even though I'm talking to the camera, I get carried away and I think, oh yeah, it's just me making a bag. Okay. Reach in there and push that bottom corner out. Okay. There we go. Folks, we have a bag. So I'm going to zip it up here. We're going to throw together a quick shoulder strap for it, and that's going to be that. Okay? Now again, this is the basic bag. You can get as fancy or crazy as you want with, you know, the shoulder strap or putting tooled accents on it or whatever, different colors of leather. I mean, you name it, you can do it. But this is the basic bag to start with, to add all those things later. So I'm going to grab one of my leather straps here, bring the camera back up, back over to the work area. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to create this right here. Just a strap with two either swivel snap hooks or I think these are called halter hooks, maybe something like that. Anyway, they don't swivel. They're not the greatest because they don't swivel. I do really like the ones that swivel, but these are nice and heavy duty and solid brass, and I like that too. So anyway, but all we do is we just take a strap, put it crossbody on us or however, and figure out how long we want it, and put a couple of rivets in there, and the hooks. I've shown it many times in other bag videos. Yeah, If you want to get fancy with it and make it where it's adjustable, you can put a buckle right here and have it to where you can, cinch it up to wear it over one shoulder, or let it out to wear it over cross slung. I personally am a cross slinging kind of person because I like the security of it all, that somebody couldn't just grab my bag and go, because normally my bag's gonna contain a firearm in it. So there we go, right there. So there it is in all its glory. That is the new laptop bag from Maker's Leather Supply. I hope you've really enjoyed watching the video. I hope that I am able to do the editing I need to do due to my mistake there. And yeah. So until the next time, I am Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel if you like our videos and you want to see us build more things and show the support. So thank you very much. Have a great day.